What is happening, everybody? It is Trey here. I'm joined today by my dad, Shawn, and we're going to be taking a look at Guns N' Roses' debut album, Appetite for Destruction. And if this is your first time stopping by the channel, y'all, we appreciate it. Hear reactions to the classics. We take a look back at some of the most classic albums of all time, do a detailed track-by-track review of them. And just like today, for me at least, it is usually the first time we've heard the record. Dad, I know you're familiar with it. I was familiar with the biggest hits on it, but everything else was new to me.
Yeah, I actually owned this cassette back in the days, but I really only spun the 3 hits. I was familiar with a little bit of the rest of it. Their follow-ups several years later after GNR Lies, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, very familiar with those. This thing debuted in July of 1987 on Geffen Records. Not any critical acclaim whatsoever, but it eventually went to #1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. But it took a year to do it. A year to the day after it was released, it hit #1. It was on the charts for 147 weeks. It is the best-selling debut album of all time, sold over 30 million records. It's number 62 on the Rolling Stones Top 500 albums of all time, and number 60 on Guitar World's best guitar albums of all time. Now, they struggled a little bit finding a producer. They ended up settling on a guy named Mike Klink, who had done several Triumph albums. But before that, they looked at Paul Stanley from Kiss, but he wanted to change the drumming setup, so they weren't down for that. Then they looked at our boy Mutt Lange, who did several stuff between Def Leppard, AC/DC, and several other things. But he was too expensive. The record company already spent $370,000, Trey, doing this album, which is unheard of for a debut album. So they ended up with Mike Klink, who was working 18-hour days. I don't think either of those other two guys probably would have done that.
No.
He was splicing together the takes with a razor blade. The percussion was laid down in just 6 days. Slash took quite a bit of time doing his stuff. He had a hard time finding a guitar that he liked. He finally ended up going with a Gibson Les Paul copy. He plugged it into a Marshall amplifier, and that gave him his thing. But Axl Rose, the lead singer, he literally recorded every song line by line and then would go back and record it again. He wanted perfectionism, so everybody laid everything else down, and then they left Mike Klink and Axl for probably weeks on end.
We are going to start this thing off with Welcome to the Jungle. It gotta be one of the best debut songs for any band. I mean,
ever.
It's up there, I think, with, like Break On Through to the Other Side with the Doors debut, Good Times, Bad Times for Zepp. It's up in, I think some rarefied air.
Oh, I agree. It's number 467 on the Rolling Stones Top 500 Songs of all time. Reached number 7 in the U.S., number 24 in the U.K. I'm not even going to get into all the stories about what this is about. Could be an encounter that Axl had in New York. Could be when he was with his friend in Seattle. Could be when he was first getting off the bus in LA. It doesn't really matter. The jungle eventually became known as LA. It is just, I hear this song right now and I get pumped up. Guys, I was in high school playing basketball. We'd warm up to this. It gets me going, man. This song is tremendous.
This song just gets me fired up. One of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs. I was familiar with this going into it. Great guitar sound. Slash is definitely, for me, the highlight of the band.
Oh yeah, he's tremendous track in and track out.
The next track is going to be It's So Easy. The band said that it was an account of a time where they were all essentially able to just live off of girls that were hanging around them whenever they didn't have much money. It would just be so easy to essentially get any girl that they wanted. For me, I think it was interesting because Axl was in a deeper voice register here.
Yeah, he was.
But it's not a standout for me personally.
No, I agree. It's not a standout on here. And Duff's the one that talked about this a lot through the years, and just what you said, that it was about being able to kind of live off girls. They would go to the strip clubs when they were just a minor band and hang around these girls and go home with them and be able to eat their food and kind of sleep on their couches and do all that stuff. But Axl later on said it was also a reflection for him of when they got really famous, could have any girl they wanted, which is something that Axl will talk about a lot through these 12 tracks. Next up is Night Train, an anthem they kind of made up on the spot while they were drinking Night Train, which is California wine that was very popular with the band back in the day, Trey, because it had a high alcohol content and a low price. Very similar to other wines back in the mid to late 80s that I might have indulged in just a little bit when I was in high school. Ours was Mad Dog 2020, $2 a bottle. kind of the same thing here. The original riff came up with by Izzy and Slash while they were sitting on the floor of the band's practice room.
Yeah, and it remained incomplete until one night they were walking around Palm Avenue sharing a bottle of Night Train. Somebody yelled, "I'm on the Night Train," and then the whole band joined in with Axl improvising the lines in between. And then the song was born.
I like this song. It's got a nice little riff. It's a pretty good track.
I think it's a definite step up from It's So Easy.
Oh, for sure.
Just started that upward trajectory of the album again. Again, fantastic riff and solid vocal performance by Axl. Out to Get Me is the next track. This is about how Axl was harassed by the police for stuff that he didn't do. He's essentially telling him, hey man, you hound me for all this, but you're never going to catch me for anything.
Yeah, and I mean, growing up, he got into a lot of trouble back in Indiana, so there's a little bit of truth to this, and then him feeling like he's being persecuted.
But I enjoyed the fact it almost had like a call and response.
It did. Very different on this album.
Yeah, where he's almost shouting out a phrase, and then the backing vocals coming in saying the response. So I thought that made it unique and a little different from the rest of this A-side.
That brings us to Mr. Brownstone. Slash and Izzy wrote this thing while they were sitting around Izzy's apartment complaining about being heroin addicts. Brownstone is the slang for heroin. Once you understand that and listen to the lyrics, it makes a whole lot of sense. They even talk about how they can have him for a little bit, but now they got to have more and more and more because of the tolerance you develop. And when you listen to it with the ear that you know it's about heroin addiction, it's actually a really good song.
Oh, I thought it was a great track, one of my favorites on the album. Kind of reminded me of Old Brown Sugar by the Stones, another song about heroin.
Yes, exactly.
And Slash and Izzy actually wrote the lyrics to this on the back of a grocery bag, brought it to Axl, and then they just ironed it out. I thought this was good because it was real. Though there are times that this album details the rock and roll lifestyle and glorifies it, it didn't ever glorify drug use here. No. And I thought that was a unique spin after we've had some kind of party anthem type songs. Then we get into something pretty serious here. So for that, I'm going to give it major props. And yeah, it was one of my favorites on this A-side. And we close the A-side with Paradise City. This is ranked 459 on Rolling Stone's top 500 songs of all time. I was very familiar with this as well.
Sure.
One of their most famous tracks. This was actually written by Slash in their rental van on the way back from a gig in San Francisco.
And Axl talks about the verses are more about being in the jungle. We're getting back into that welcome to the jungle. And the chorus is more about being in the Midwest or somewhere. So the lyrics basically talk about you can be in the big city and do whatever you want, but he's longing to go back to the small town roots. You hear the first 1 second of this song and you know exactly what it is, and that is the mark of a fantastic song. Tremendous way to start and end the first side of your debut record.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to leave those new listeners at the time with something to remember.
They use a synthesizer.
That's
the
right.
only track on here that they do, and you wouldn't think of Guns using the synth at this time in their career, but it works.
No, it definitely does work, and again, another fantastic guitar performance and good lyrics, great vocal performance. Can't say enough good about this song.
We're going to start off the B-side with My Michelle. It's actually about a real-life girl, Michelle Young, that the band knew. Slash actually met her first back in junior high. Axl says that him and her were riding in a car, and Your Song by Elton John came on, and she said, I wish someone would write a song about me. So Axl does this, but then when he looks at it back, when he wrote it, none of it was true to life. So he goes back in, Trey, and he starts writing about her real life, about her mom was a heroin addict, but now she's underground because she died of heroin overdose. She's a drug addict. So he goes into all of this. Axl was nervous about it, but he went ahead and played it for her and showed it to her, and she liked it a lot. Slash did say there was a good ending to the story, that she did get her life together and moved across the country away from her bad influences.
It has a unique sound for the first 30 seconds or so, and then the tempo really shifts. Something a little bit softer, I guess, than what we had in the previous few
and some
tracks.
Reality to this song.
Of these kind of hard rock type-ish bands that we've reviewed on the channel so far, I think the lyrics here are probably the most sophisticated. For a lot of this album, there's some heavy topics that Axl brings to the table here, so I appreciated that, and this song was a great example of that. Think About You is a next track. Izzy is the main composer of it, plays guitar on it. He said that it's really just a quick song about love, sex, money, Hollywood.
Rock and roll, baby.
Yeah, it is different in the fact that the girl isn't really objectified, so it's a little bit of a sweeter song than some of these others.
For me, also another middle of the road. low, which means it's actually pretty good because it's a really good album. So I enjoyed it, and that brings us up to the iconic Sweet Child of Mine. It's number 182 on the Rolling Stones Top 500 Songs of All Time, and it is the only number one that Guns N' Roses ever had.
Yeah, and that opening riff, I'm sure you guys can tell what it is even after my awful rendition. What a fantastic track. This is probably my favorite.
I think it is mine too.
Guns N' Roses. This and Welcome to the Jungle are a tough 1-2 for me, at least what I've heard from them so far. Filled with great solos. It is a longer song.
Slash actually said the song turned into a huge hit, obviously, but it kind of makes me sick. I like it, but just kind of the way it came about. And the way it came about, Slash and Steven Adler were warming up, and Slash said he was playing a circus-type melody, which turned into this song. He's making faces at Adler. And then Izzy asked Slash to play it again, and Izzy came up with some chords. Duff created the bass line, Adler playing the beat, and Axl all this time was listening upstairs in his room, and he was inspired to write the lyrics, which he completed by the following afternoon. He based it on his current girlfriend at the time, Erin Everly, who he went on to marry. That's one thing that's underrated about Axl, is he could really come up with lyrics. There's several stories I just didn't have time to get into throughout this album where he just heard a tune or heard these guys playing a little riff and came up with the music. But so that it was created in no time. Slash actually said he thought it was just a filler track when they first started doing it. It is anything but that. As you said, it's probably my favorite Guns. I have a much more wide range of Guns library than you have right now with other albums, but yeah, it's top flight.
And then that takes us to You're Crazy. Essentially here, Axl's just berating a girl who's crazy, wants to have sex all the time. For me, this was probably my least favorite track on the album. Not one I'm going to be revisiting again.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's fine.
And I think it's hurt a little bit coming off of Sweet Child of Mine, too.
Yeah, of course. You come off that iconic song, and that kind of goes with the next song as well. Anything Goes. It's basically just about anything goes in sex. You're starting to develop a little theme here. Same thing with this song. It's fine. It's nothing great. That and the previous track are my two least favorite on here.
I'd agree with that. Nothing that really makes them stand out per se. But then we go up a little bit with Rocket Queen, the final track. Again, a longer song, 6 minutes or so. Yeah. And Slash and Duff wrote the main riff when they first got together in a short-lived band called Road Crew with Adler. And according to Axl, he said he wrote the song for this girl who's going to have a band and call it Rocket Queen. She kind of kept me alive for a while. The last part of the song is my message to this person or anybody else who can get something out of it. It's like there's hope and a friendship note at the end of the song, and thus the end of the album.
Yeah, and this song is strange because it's basically two separate songs almost. The first part's really fast. The second part, which you just mentioned, is more heartfelt. I like this song a lot. It's got a weird thing in the middle that doesn't need to be there, honestly. It kind of just sleazes it up. Many of you may like it, but what happened was actually literally took a girl in the sound booth, had sex with her for 30 minutes, and the sounds you hear in the middle of the song, everybody's going to rush out and fast forward to the middle of the song, is you hear that sex act. And it was just unnecessary because it is a really good song. I would even say, if I took that out of there, it's the fourth best song on this album, maybe fifth behind Mr. Brownstone, but it's right in there behind the three iconic hits. Axl's able to show off a high range in the first part and then really heartfelt in the second. So I liked it a lot. We could have done without the sex act for the middle 30 seconds there, but hey man, it's rock and roll, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that second half where it is a little bit more heartfelt. I thought that was a fitting way to end the record out. And that's going to take us to our favorite tracks. Definitely the three biggest hits. Mr. Brownstone I thought was pretty darn good too.
And I'll mimic those four, and then I'll also take this last song, Rocket Queen. That brings us to our overall grade. And as I said a few minutes ago, if this was 10 songs, it would have been really, really high on this scale. For me, it's 12 songs. I'm going to give it an 8.25. I'll tell you what, though, Trey, 3 of those 12 songs, 25% of the album, are absolutely iconic. Near 10 songs. Sweet Child of Mine, Welcome to the Jungle, and Paradise City.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to be just a little bit lower than you. I'm going to be at a 7.75 to even an 8 range, just somewhere in there. I enjoyed this. That's going to wrap it up from us today, y'all. Please let us know what you think of Appetite for Destruction in the comments below. What is your favorite track? Dad, as always, appreciate all the research.
Enjoyed it on this one.
Always fun to see the backstories to some of these iconic songs. And if you enjoyed this video, y'all be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. We upload multiple times a week in a variety of genres, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So there's going to be something for everybody. And thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, we will see you.